To get us started here on time, to respect your time. So welcome everyone. My name is Becky Schewe. I'm an associate professor of sociology and a senior research associate in the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs here at Syracuse University. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge with respect the Onondaga Nation, firekeepers of the Haudenosaunee, the indigenous people on whose ancestral lands Syracuse University now stands. I'd also like to thank the Center for Policy Research staff who coordinate the logistics for our What's at Stake series, particularly Alyssa Kirk. And thank you to the Maxwell Dean's Office for their support of this event. Today's panel is part of the What's at Stake series, which is organized by the Center for Policy Research here in the Maxwell School. CPR is a research center that supports policy relevant research and disseminates knowledge that enables leaders to make informed policy decisions and provide effective solutions to critical challenges in our local region, state, country, and around the world. What's at Stake is a series of timely discussion panels featuring multidisciplinary groups of Maxwell faculty who provide insights and answer questions about the implications of recent changes to laws or policies or new developments, such as the Micron development that we're here discussing today. This is the third in a series of What's at Stake panels on the implications of Micron for Central New York. Today's panelists will focus on the implications for the region's natural, physical, and social environments. Please check the CPR website to see videos from our two previous panels. As background for today's panel, Micron Technology, which is a US-based producer of computer memory and data storage, announced their intentions to invest up to $100 billion to build a mega complex of computer chip plants in the northern suburbs of Syracuse. This development is expected to affect the local physical and social infrastructure and natural environment in numerous ways. Concerns have been raised about increases in traffic, water and wastewater treatment needs, and protection of endangered species in the building area. In addition, the rapid population growth that Micron is expected to generate will increase demand for local infrastructure, such as roads and the airport, and for amenities such as restaurants and recreational venues. Here to discuss these issues with us today are three Maxwell School faculty members and senior research associates within the Center for Policy Research. They will each provide some opening remarks about the Micron development from within their specific areas of expertise. We'll open it up for a discussion and a Q&A. And audience members, you can enter your questions in the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can. So I'll start with a brief introduction of our panelists. Alex Rothenberg is an assistant professor of economics and a senior research associate in the Center for Policy Research in the Maxwell School. Professor Rothenberg conducts research in development and urban economics and studies the effects of different policy interventions on urban growth and development outcomes. Yilin Hou is a professor of public administration and international affairs, a 10th decade faculty scholar, and a senior research associate in the Center for Policy Research in the Maxwell School. He's also a visiting scholar at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia and a research associate at CE SIFO in Munich, Germany. Professor Hou's research expertise is in fiscal policy, public budgeting, and intergovernmental fiscal relations. His current research focuses on property tax administration and mechanisms of public budgeting. He published in 2018 a co-authored book which offers a standard framework for evaluating property tax systems. Carmen Carrión-Flores is a research assistant professor of economics and a senior research associate in the Center for Policy Research and the Dynamic Sustainability Lab in the Maxwell School. Her research interests are in land use economics, energy efficiency, air pollution, and migration. She studies the effect of environmental and energy policies on air pollution and energy demand. So I'll kick us off with Yilin Hou, starting us today.
Okay, thank you, Becky. I'll start from here. The environment, infrastructure, and amenities each play an important role in the life quality of residents. In this case, in the attraction of Micron's investment to Central New York. In each of these three elements, Central New York has historical achievements and lessons also, as well as current inadequacies and problems that call for keen attention from the lawmakers, the executive branch, and all of us as residents, homeowners, taxpayers. I'll put the three roles in one: resident, homeowner, and taxpayer. The environment first. New York State is endowed with natural beauty of the mountains, forests, large water bodies, and rich soil with many types of natural resources. Among all these, the Finger Lakes, plus Lake Ontario and hundreds of smaller other lakes are the pride of New York. The Adirondacks is a gem for which the philosopher poet Ralph Waldo Emerson composed a poem poetically describing an August vacation in 1858. The natural endowment, as one of the triggers, paved the way for the early entry of a brand name big firms, economic development, and prosperity of New York State. However, there was at least one bitter lesson to remember forever and learn from. That is the pollution with mercury of the Onondaga Lake. That sowed the lasting poison into the lake bed, extremely difficult and costly to clean. Otherwise, the lakefront should have been the hub of civilian recreation activities with various amenities and green room for property wealth of Syracusans. That was the historic lesson from the turn of the 20th century. Do not repeat the same mistake. Apply high standards, develop a high-tech economy while preserving our environment for the long future: water, forest, soil, and the overall landscape of Central New York. Second, physical and social infrastructure is the key to lasting economic prosperity and social progress. New York State boasts a history of avant-garde and bold explorations that were in most cases successful. Two examples are handy. The first one is the Erie Canal that was constructed starting in 1817 and completed in 1825 with a total length of over 300 miles, close to 400, from Albany to Buffalo. It was a tremendous success in the early 19th century, the longest artificial waterway and the greatest public works project in North America at that time. The Erie Canal put New York on the map as the Empire State, what we know it now, or what it is famous now. The leader in population, industry, and economic strength, above all, innovation in technology and financing. I will come back to this topic when addressing questions. The canal transformed New York City into the nation's or the world's principal seaport and opened the interior of North America to settlement. The second example is the New York State 1960 to 2020, not mistaken, 2020, long-term blueprint of state infrastructure development. This is an almost forgotten success story by most people. It was a daring long-term plan. I saw the physical large-size document in the late 1990s in the Burr Library. I hope it is still there now, at least in the archives. All ideas and listed projects in that document or in that blueprint have been completed and put into operation by the 1990s. The 60-year master plan was possible in hindsight, probably only in the golden age of economic development in the post-World War II era. Now, in the midst of a tumultuous world, we are implicitly faced with a God-given historical call again for vision, audacity, determination, ingenuity, and diligence for the future of Central New York and your city, and even the US. Later, I will go into some details of the financing method and instruments for financing infrastructure. Finally, but by no means less important, are amenities for the quality of life for residents and a key factor in attracting real large-size investment commitments like the Micron project. From the start of its statehood, New York and its localities have been paying fair attention to this wide range of life-supporting or life-supplemental facilities. 3 examples stand out: parks, state parks, county, city, and village parks. New York, in general, has done very well, matching its marvelous natural endowment with government-supported recreational facilities. Second, our public library system is outstanding with rich collections, of course, a lot of resources supporting it, and year-round services to various age groups. The third one is the road system that was or has been extensive and highly functional. The problem is that in recent decades, there has been a lack of upgrading or even maintenance. Therefore, New York State and Central New York possess all the makings for another round of glory and prosperity. But to turn it into reality, there are many tasks that we must accomplish and do well. There's no pie from the sky. Micron's investment commitment has to be matched from our side with inventiveness by state and local governments, as well as endorsement and hard work of all Central New Yorkers. I'll stop here.
All right, thank you very much. So I'll turn it over to Carmen next for a brief introduction. You're muted.
Okay, thank you, Becky. The vulnerability and dispersion of global production networks is accelerating the shift away from previous globalization in the manufacturing industry. The reshoring of the manufacturing industry has been a priority in the last 3 administrations by providing tax incentives to encourage the return of several manufacturing processes. Correspondingly, the reshoring of the manufacturing industry has garnered local attention, especially with the arrival of Micron technology to Central New York. In response to this global production network shift, each region will likely address numerous challenges arising from the interdependencies between economic development and natural environment conservation. It is not the first time that Central New York has faced trade-offs between economic growth and the quality and protection of environmental amenities. In the past, heavy manufacturing processes have left a mark on the surrounding in situ natural resources, such as the contamination of Onondaga Lake. Manufacturing facilities have had a large negative impact on the environment, such as consuming large quantities of energy and fresh water and producing large quantities of hazardous waste. At the same time, it is expected that the arrival of Micron manufacturing facility will create positive externalities. For example, the role of employment location in attracting people to a region. Population growth attracts firms to a region because of the availability of labor and demand for goods and services. Therefore, reshoring efforts may also attract additional firms, creating a positive effect. Whether the overall impact of the arrival of Micron manufacturing facility is a positive or a negative one will depend on the pre-existing conditions of the receiving county, such as the quality of in situ environmental amenities, the regulatory environmental framework, and the pre-existing urban development pattern. A big question lingers, and that is under what circumstances do the agglomeration advantages, that is better infrastructure and increased rate, for example, of economic development offsets the degradation and overuse of environmental amenities. In this case would be energy and water use. The simple answer to this question is balance. According to the Micron's press release, the facility in Clay, New York plans to use 100% electricity from renewable sources. In addition, Micron will use green infrastructure and sustainable building attributes for the construction of the plant by adopting the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design LEED Gold status. Finally, according to their press release, greenhouse gas emissions for the new facility will be mitigated and controlled by using state-of-the-art technology. Climate change impacts aside, water demands are noteworthy in the manufacturing of semiconductors. While there is no specific information in the company's press release about water efficiency efforts by Micron, other than the LEED Gold status, we should push for crafting local policies that require companies to invest in water efficiency technologies beyond a building certification label to benefit the receiving community. Furthermore, local policies that mandate a net positive water use and energy efficiency could also facilitate the water positive and zero carbon development through different incentives, policy incentives, such as the label that they are using.
Fantastic, thank you. And then I'll turn it over to Alex.
Hi, thanks so much. I guess, first, I think it's really just hard to underscore the potential magnitude of this investment for the region. And I think in talking about all of this, it's also important to keep in mind that, we don't have crystal balls and the future is highly uncertain. But if we are to believe Micron and our policymakers who have crafted the incentive schemes for bringing Micron here, the new megafact plant in Clay, New York will directly and indirectly create 50,000 jobs for the metro area. Now, given that there are roughly 310,000 workers in the labor market in the Syracuse MSA, as of September 2023, this addition of jobs would be huge, representing an over 16% increase in employment. This would raise the number of jobs in the Syracuse MSA to levels that haven't been seen for over 30 years. Now, when we consider the effects of this investment on overall welfare, we need to compare the benefits of increased employment, which should be substantial, with potential costs. And one category of costs includes what I think of as sort of the costs of greater density in the region, including larger housing prices, greater traffic congestion, and greater use of public services. Some of these costs may be hard to avoid, but policymakers need to be thoughtful and forward-looking. They should encourage greater housing supply in places that need it, and they should judiciously shape traffic patterns to maximize efficiency and equity. And they should expand the supply of public services as needed. One factor that might mitigate some of these greater costs of density is the extent to which some of the added job growth from Micron's investment occurs not through net migration, but instead results from bringing workers who are already here back into the labor market. So according to the U.S. Department of Labor, the labor force participation rate in Onondaga County is only around 78%, which means that roughly 1 in 5 eligible workers, many of whom are in their prime working years, are simply not participating in the labor market, and they're neither working nor searching for work. And it's difficult to say how much of the employment needs of Micron will be met by bringing these workers back into the labor market, but job growth along these lines would be fantastic and create less additional congestion, public services use, and housing market impacts. As Carmen mentioned, a separate category of costs is what I think of as kind of environmental costs. Chip manufacturing is not particularly environmentally friendly and tends to use harmful chemicals and gases such as perfluorocarbons. The industry also requires vast amounts of water and energy to produce chips and get them into the hands of consumers. It's hard to forecast, how Micron's new energy needs for the area, but an often cited figure comes from Taiwan-based TSMC, which is one of the world's largest semiconductor producers. So TSMC uses almost 5% of all of Taiwan's electricity and more electricity than the entire city of Taipei. Micron's new plant will probably use millions of gallons of water a day and may create hazardous waste. Policymakers, I think, need to be very careful in scrutinizing where this energy is coming from, how to ensure that Micron's water needs are met, in addition to meeting the needs of the water needs of a growing metro area. And they need to assert a heavily regulatory hand to make sure that Micron's environmental impact is understood and minimized, particularly for residents in our community and our region.
Fantastic, thank you. So now we'll start our discussion in Q&A. And just as a reminder to the audience, you can feel free to enter your questions into the chat at any time, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. So I think I'll start us off in reverse order here. So Alex, I'll start it off with you. How does Micron's proposed investment interact with the large planned changes to transportation infrastructure already coming for the region, particularly the so-called community grid?
Yeah, thanks, Becky. So, I think this is a really important question. So I-81 is an integral thoroughfare for the Syracuse MSA. This highway serves as a major commuter route connecting northern and southern suburbs to businesses and services downtown and to the hospitals and institutions on University Hill. I-81 is also an important highway for international trade. It connects the border of Quebec to routes in southern areas as far away as Tennessee. And when Highway 81 was built and planned in the 1950s and 60s, large sections, including the I-81 viaduct, bisected mostly Black neighborhoods, including those live in the 15th Ward. And this decimated housing prices and eroded the communities of people who live there. Today, these portions of I-81 are deteriorating and they don't meet current engineering standards and they have high accident rates. And so the community grid plan for transforming I-81, which was recently approved by the New York State Transportation Department after a long and lengthy kind of battle, involves demolishing this existing viaduct and replacing it with a tree-lined avenue, walking paths, and bike lanes. Much of the traffic that now uses the viaduct will be rerouted to I-481, which traverses the eastern suburbs and connects with I-81 farther north. So I-81 will essentially become a business loop, and large volumes of highway traffic will go around the city instead of through it. And I think it's not exactly clear what's going to happen to congestion and commuting patterns as a consequence of this decision. So I think, given Micron's new investment plans, I think there is still quite a bit of uncertainty about how residents, workplace, and firm locations will respond. And these decisions will in turn affect commuting patterns and traffic and equilibrium. On the one hand, the removal of the section of I-81 that bisects the city could potentially restore parts of downtown that were sort of decimated by the highway. And this could open up new investments in residential real estate, encourage new business and retail amenity growth, and create a walkable, living, lasting community. And I think the city's really hoping this is going to happen. And there's a $1 billion plan to tear down hundreds of aging public housing units and build new streets, parks, and improve the school system in the surrounding neighborhood. On the other hand, this is probably going to make it harder for certain residents of downtown Syracuse to commute to the new jobs that Micron is creating in Clay, New York, particularly people who live on Syracuse South Side. The removal of the section of I-81 could also divert economic activity away from northern suburbs that fed off of this highway traffic, and it might make it somewhat harder for certain residents in the area to access amenities downtown. So, in short, I think the community grid and Micron's investments will both create winners and losers. And in urban economics, there's a concept we have called the spatial equilibrium, which loosely states that if you're made worse off by some project or some policy decision, then you should move. And while moving might be costly, I think affected residents will move if they are better off in another location in the MSA. And as they do so, the city will eventually adjust to a new equilibrium. And my hope is that with Micron's increased demand for labor, and this will offset the added cost of density and additional environmental costs, and after a period of adjustment, residents will be on average better off. But I think it's important to keep in mind that there are some very complex issues of equity and efficiency that are just difficult to ascertain and deserve further scrutiny.
Thanks, Alex. Carmen, I'll turn it to you. So could you tell us a little bit about what are the negative environmental concerns that the community should be attuned to for manufacturing microchips, despite Micron's efforts to use renewable electricity and sustainable building attributes? In particular, we've got some questions from the audience about concerns about water shortages or drinking water contaminations.
Yep. So I mean, again, we have to be mindful that we live in the semiconductor age. Microchips have become essential to our everyday life, and there is a global demand for these semiconductors. Those the environmental implications of this manufacturing facility are, again, a matter of potential concern, especially given the substantial economic scale and high growth rate of these industries. So again, what are the potential negative impacts that I can think of? One is chemical usage. Chemicals used in the manufacturing of these chips, many of them are toxic and can be harmful to the environment if they are not properly managed. Toxic chemical releases can contaminate air, water, and soil. And it is key to identify how much of what substances are used and emitted. So according to the Toxic Release Inventory, TRI, which is a database collected by the Environmental Protection Agency, the total consumption by the semiconductor industry of sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, phosphoric acid, nitric acid, and ammonia exceeds the national average of the manufacturing sector. Another concern is energy intensity. While the use of renewable electricity is a positive step, DRAM production can still be energy intensive. High energy consumption, even if it is from renewable sources, can strain local power grids and may not completely eliminate the environmental impact associated with energy use. For example, energy use in the fabrication stage of these semiconductors, such as clean room heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, are major energy consuming operations and account for 50% of the total energy used by the fabrication of these microchips, according to the Berkeley Laboratory website. The last aspect is water usage. Obviously, there is a lot of concern, local concern about the water use of this semiconductor industry, and it requires substantial amounts of high purity water. So the purification stage generally occurs on site in order to remove contaminants such as minerals and bacteria. The plan, according to Micron, is to locate 40% of its global DRAM production in the US. It is, again, something to consider because of the magnitude. Just to give you an idea, a typical microchip plant that fabricates 40,000 chips per month could consume between 2 to 3 million gallons per day of water. And again, we could think about that if there is an improper water management that can lead to pollution and water scarcity. So in sum, there has to be a Micron's commitment to environmental sustainability, and this should extend beyond the use of renewable energy and sustainable building attributes, and basically encompass the entire production process and supply chain to minimize the negative impacts on the environment.
Thank you. Yilin, I've got a question for you about the tax side of things. So could you give us some information on, for an example of a large-scale infrastructure project in New York and how that infrastructure was financed at the time, and then your ideas about how the state, county, and city might implement a financing for this new infrastructure that's going to be required?
Okay, sure. This is a very interesting question, a very important one. Also, it's a kind of multi-dimensional. Let me start with the Erie Canal. Back in the early 1900s, that's 19th century, 1820s, 1820s. the construction of the Erie Canal was done with bond, that's debt. The total cost at that time was a bit over $7 million. And it was financed on the financial market and not through the government. The federal, state, even local governments at that time was not very supportive or confident about this project. However, the project was very successful. Within 10 years, the investment was fully recovered, and the financing was made by basically the tolls of the user charge for using the canal, and also there was a kind of a taxes on salt or goods sold at auction and passengers. There was another one which is very old but very interesting. At that time, it was called kind of put it this way. Then legislation allowed for a new tax on properties located within 24 miles of the canal on either side. Although this tax was never implemented, it gives us the idea, the hint of something that was called land value capture. That is, when there is infrastructure investment, and because of the investment, the land value in the nearby region by a certain radius or distance all appreciates quite a bit. Then the appreciation can be taxed. This is the so-called land value capture. That was the Erie Canal. So it was debt, right? In today's language, it's called a revenue bond. You say we invest into something big, then the collateral or the backup security is from the revenue from the project. Erie Canal was a success story. Another one was the New York State Thruway, or the I-90 and then I-87, basically from New York City to Buffalo. It was also a very successful story. Because the New York Thruway was a project, something we call superhighway with smooth curves, wide medians, and unobstructed driver side distance. With these features considered into design and implementation, it's really a superhighway. And the finance was done by first creating a thruway authority, a kind of a creation of the state government. This authority issued revenue bonds, again, using the market. So in this way, the New York Thruway was constructed, then maintained, upgraded. Up to now, it's been running very successfully. 1/3 of its load is from outside of states. So that's a kind of financial mechanism. Now, in today's New York State tax, in particular local property tax and gas tax, are there any other ways that we can go? Can we still use bonds? Yes. Municipal bonds, in particular revenue bonds, will be one definitely very a handy way to use. That is, for example, we can create, let's give it a name, say New York State NYS 21, meaning 21st century, say NYS 21 infrastructure mutual fund, also kind of revenue bonds. And New York State has quite a large repertoire of public employee pensions or the institutional investors. New York State can also invest into, come up with tax incentives or policy incentives to encourage personal savings to move into this New York State 21 infrastructure. This is another way. And a third one will be, many people nowadays are already using electric cars. And we smile, say we saved a few dollars on the gas, right? But without thinking, who will pay for the construction maintenance of the highway? The gas tax was invented in the early 1900s as a way to, basically it's an excise tax, a special sales tax on a particular good with the revenue earmarked for the construction and maintenance of highway. Now with more cars converting into a transition into electric, the gas tax will decrease and then go away. What can we do? Well, the technology is here already. We can use mileage tax. That is really no pie from the sky, right? Everyone should be paying towards the financing of the highway. So that's another one.
All right,
So,
I'll have to stop us there. Sorry,
yeah,
move us to another question here. Carmen, I've got a question for you from the chat. We've got someone who wants to know, are there any case examples of government regulation or intervention that have successfully mitigated these potential negative environmental effects? In other words, examples that our state and local governments could model themselves after. And you're muted again.
Thank you, Becky. Well, obviously, Micron should be very upfront about comprehensive sustainability strategies. And again, this includes minimizing wastewater, improving energy efficiency, managing water resources responsibly, and using environmentally friendly materials and processes. And again, the government, the regulation should be in place in order to guarantee at least any of these sustainable practices. Life cycle assessments, the LSCs, are often used to evaluate the overall environmental impact of a product from raw material extraction to disposal. And again, these LCAs can identify areas for improvement in terms of trying to reduce these negative effects to the environment from the manufacturing of semiconductor chips.
Fantastic, thank you. Alex, I got a question for you from the audience. We've got a question asking, how do you think the arrival of Micron technology in Syracuse will affect the relationship between how land is used for commercial growth will affect the prices of commercial properties in the area?
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting question. So I guess the first thing I would say is that I think the nature of work is really changing, and the way we're using commercial properties is really changing quite a bit. So this very technology that we're using to host this call, right, this Zoom technology, is enabling people to collaborate across vast distances in ways that they were unable to collaborate before. And so I think what's happening in many cities throughout America is that there's an increasing working from home, and which is great for workers, and particularly for families with being able to meet the demands of families and small children and so forth. But one potential downside of that is that the demand for commercial property has kind of been falling. I'm not totally sure what's happening to commercial property in the Syracuse area, but I suspect that this is something that's been happening in New York City and San Francisco. Commercial leases are kind of coming up. Many commercial properties are particularly like lower grade buildings are kind of going vacant. And that's certainly straining the commercial property sector. Now, you have this new investment that Micron is putting in place, and that's going to create demand for employment growth. And I think, a question is like, how much of this commercial property that's downtown that's maybe not being used as frequently as it used to be, is there a way that we can, convert some of that commercial property into residential uses, right? Basically achieving issues of providing housing for workers. There's all kinds of permit issues involved in that conversion, and all kinds of infrastructure issues involved in making places that were just offices places where people can live. But that is a potential exciting thing for revitalizing some of the areas downtown, which I know are blighted and vacant. So, but I think that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, great, thanks. I've got a question that I think maybe this might be for Alex, and Yilin, you might have thoughts on this as well. What impact will Micron have on existing manufacturing companies' employment needs?
Yilin, do you want to go first or?
You go ahead, and then I will add on.
Yeah, so I think it's again, it's hard to say. So that I think we do not have crystal balls. We are looking at the data we have and trying to think about what's going to happen 10 years from now, when the nature of work, employment, the whole semiconductor industry could be very, very different from it is now. But I think in general, one of the big demands that kind of the Micron's investment is going to have is in the sort of construction sector, right? They have to build this new chip facility, this clean room. So there's going to be a lot of highly specialized, very, very controlled, engineering processes that are going to be involved in this construction. That's going to potentially, divert labor away from existing manufacturing that's using those sorts of construction. But I think there's also the potential for new business growth, right? And, sort of spillover, second, third order kind of linkages between the industries that are going to be using and, the suppliers of material for the chip production. So, there could be, positive spillover effects on employment for other manufacturers that are nearby. This could attract more manufacturing to related industries, et cetera.
Let me chip in here. The Micron $100 billion investment will occur not overnight, but over 20 years. That gives us a lot of time and leeway, and also that allows the natural, smooth, incremental changes to occur over time. There's several aspects. The first one, the Micron investment will bring in from other states all over the country, all over the world, a large group of high-tech engineers and scientists. That's a very positive driver to the local, regional, state economy. That's very good. And that will have spillover effects into the other sectors, right? So simply put, the Micron investment will bring in a change that will spill over into the whole echelon of labor force by education, by skill set, from high to medium to low, education from high to medium to low. So the job opportunity will be available, more readily available to anyone with any professional skills. That's one. Second, for income levels at high, medium, and low. So Alex mentioned a few minutes ago that the current labor participation rate in Central New York is about 78%, not very high, about the lower average of the country's average. So with the Micron investment over 20-year window, that will change. So we can attract talent from all over the country. We can keep locally trained labor force. We have in New York City, NYU, Columbia, in the Central New York, we have Cornell, Syracuse, we have Rochester, we have the state SUNY system. So we have this capacity here. We will be able to train a lot over the years, and the labor force will change also. And that whole change in landscape will provide more opportunities for, in particular, the minority people and the lower middle class. They will have more opportunities to find better jobs than before.
Fantastic, thank you. I've got a question from the audience that's for Carmen, and then after she responds, I'll invite the others to respond if you have thoughts on this as well. But we have a question that says, do you foresee any environmental groups or other nonprofits or community groups organizing to oppose Micron in any capacity? Oh, we can't hear you.
I'm not aware of any institution within the area that it is opposing to Micron. I know that there is a group that it is meeting with the sustainability VP of Micron to address some of these issues, but I'm not aware of any other efforts to oppose. Again, just gathering information at this point.
Great. And
Yeah.
then we
I guess to
ahead.
jump on this issue of environmental sustainability, I think like one thing to keep in mind is that this is an investment that Micron is making, over like the next decade, right? They're kind of building a factory to make chips that are going to be needed and demanded, a decade from now, and hopefully this factory is going to run for 50 to 75 years or something, right? So I don't know how. It's got to be extremely hard to forecast what chips are going to look like decades from now, but you have to, this is a very forward-looking thing, and because because once they set up this factory, this is something they just want to keep running and running. All of these environmental issues need to be heavily scrutinized, kind of like now in the planning stage, because this is a process that they're planning for, and so my hope is that the company will make its plans public, and that we have really good information about who is going to be likely affected, and kind of are there going to be environmental monitors in elementary schools, so we know that kids should be playing outside because it's a heavy smog day, et cetera. These are all like all kind of aspects of life could be potentially affected by the factory and its production processes. And I hope that these things are made publicly available to the best extent possible.
Let me chip in 3 points. First, the Micron or semiconductor industry is already at near the top of the pyramid of manufacturing industries. It is one of the best. So the state and local political leaders and the business community have done a superb job in identifying, selecting, and negotiating, finally successfully attracting Micron into Central New York. That's a wonderful job. It's already one of the best we can have. It's a luxury. One. Second, of course, nothing is perfect, right? Even Micron, the semiconductor, may have some byproduct pollutants or some kind of things on the negative side. Our job is to exercise caution and oversight so that we pay close attention to work together with Micron, not to go against it, but to work together with it. And that's why I also suggested that the public employee pension funds and residents of New York all invest into it. Why? For the very reason or purpose that everyone will exercise caution. This is our Micron. This is New York's Micron, right? We own it. We exercise oversight over it to make sure that it works well, it works cleanly, it works sustainably. I'll stop here.
Fantastic. We have sort of a related question from the audience here that says, with the goal of 100% renewable energy, and most of that coming from sources off-site, are there ways that we could incentivize on-site solar, combined heat power, and ground source energy to either incentivize or requirements around that? In the transmission grid that currently serves the Clay location doesn't have the capacity to support the full build out at this stage. So every megawatt that is produced on site would protect that transmission grid for the rest of New York State. So is there a way to either incentivize or require them to produce more of the renewable energy there on site?
I think I'll address that question, and I think I'm going to just follow what Alex said about that this is going to be an investment, and it is not just setting up the plant and then hope for the best. I think at this point a lot of the infrastructure has to be adapted and modified so that it can accommodate the semiconductor plant here in Central New York. So there are many different ways in which this can be done in a efficient way. So that is in terms of energy. Obviously, we're at the tipping point of using renewable sources and not just coal as a source for electricity production. So solar has become, in terms of cost, has become cheaper in adopting solar technology. So there is no reason why we couldn't just, start looking into solar as one of the sources for electricity production, but it will take time. And so it's just a matter of just putting everything, as Micron needs a lot of information to give to the community because there are going to be concerns. So, for example, the Micron could invest in energy efficient technologies as well as, to reduce the carbon footprint of this. It can collaborate with local communities. It can bring in NGOs and that are going to be, participation is going to be crucial in trying to get into the sustainable goals that the community may have. So we can, implement energy efficient efforts, and they can also, create, giving back to the community as well as just, taking from the resources that we currently have and use.
Again, this is something that the 20-year window gives us a lot of luxury, right? It's a market economy, and this is the question really for scientists and engineers, all right? But I assume and I firmly believe that the energy industry has seen this as an opportunity for them also. Some investment may come following Micron into central New York, upstate New York, right? Making full use of the water, the hydropower, and then solar or wind. And the technology is here with us already. I won't worry about that.
Fantastic. A couple more questions from the audience here. So one, this might be a little bit beyond your scope, but we have a question from the audience about, is there any conversation currently happening with the Onondaga Nation or Indigenous peoples about the impact of Micron? And are there opportunities for the Onondaga Nation to be more directly involved in the process? Is that beyond the scope of y'all's specialties?
Well, the land they own will appreciate. That's their asset. And they will have, many of them, in particular, the younger generation of them, that will have the opportunity to pick better jobs than before. And they can go to local schools and universities to be trained for the high-tech industry. So I think this is a win-win, and the entry of Micron will provide more opportunities for the native Onondaga Nation also.
So what I can say, what I can say is that, again, this is an opportunity. Micron can give back to the local, community as well as local ecosystems. They can create, for example, if we're talking about water replenishment projects, restoration of natural water systems. They can create community water stewardship initiatives. So even though that I'm not aware of any talks with the Onondaga Nation, Micron is, again, should take the leadership role and, think about what are going to be how they can collaborate with local authorities and environmental organizations that can drive positive change towards our environment and the community.
Great. We do have a comment from Dr. David Sonnenfeld, who's in the audience, that there is a representative from the Onondaga Nation currently serving on Micron's Community Engagement Committee. So I think we have time for one more question. I'll end us with a sort of, I think, fun one. Is there an expectation that the population growth and change associated with Micron will lead to increased demand for more or new recreational amenities. In other words, might there be more entertainment options, recreation options in central New York?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll take this. I think that is almost certainly the case. So, one thing that's, one big reason why policymakers tried to attract investments to this region is because of these employment multipliers. And, when you create a manufacturing job, the people who are hired are going to have to spend their money locally. They're going to have to kind of go out to restaurants. They're going to have to go out to a night at the theater, et cetera. And so, this increased demand for, amenities is going to, surely attract, people to provide those amenities. So I think, my hope is that this is, an exciting development, both for kind of the labor market of low and medium skilled workers. It's an exciting development for, people who are consuming these kinds of amenities. So, I think in general, it's going to be a nice kind of added bonus of having these investments here.
Let me chip in a bit here. When New York started the Erie Canal in the 1800s, and then 1950s, the New York Thruway, it was really the kind of avant-garde, riding ahead of the tide. Now, does New York need to do that again? I think so. Now go ahead of the tide and think about the next generation of mass transportation systems. Would that be, what would be the new generation? High-speed rail or something else? That's a question for engineers. But there have been pioneers in high-speed rail in Europe, Japan, now China. The technology is mature. Now, high-speed rail has been very effective in helping revitalize urban centers. Among others, for example, it's a reliability, low cost for commuters and freight transportation. And another thing is dynamic, thriving urban centers or downtown areas will offer innumerable amenities, varieties of shops and restaurants, all kinds of services, music, theater, and other recreation things that used to be the core of middle and higher middle, upper middle, and lower middle class. And that can go parallel with a very comfortable suburban life. So think about the next generation of mass transportation. Go ahead of the tide. I think that's a call for New York in the 21st century.
Fantastic. I feel like that's maybe a good place for us to end on a positive note here. If you do have questions that we didn't get to today, feel free to follow up with us via email following the panel. And we appreciate all of your time, and we appreciate the expertise of our panelists today.